Hey everyone, on this episode of Teeter Talks, I chatted with Canadian Olympian Aaron Brown. You know him because he was the leadoff leg runner of the men's 4x100 team who won gold at this summer's Paris Olympics. It was an amazing showing of their talent, and it was just an incredibly proud Canadian moment. He does not disappoint. He is such a great storyteller. He brings so much great energy to this conversation. He gives us some behind the scenes stories of what it was like that day they won gold and shares what it's been like post gold in real life as a dad of two, balancing it all. Please tune in and enjoy Aaron Brown. Hey, Aaron, how's it going?
Hey, I'm just hanging out. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks so much for taking time out to be on Teeter Talks. I really appreciate it. It's really, really nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's great to meet you as well. And I'm excited for a nice, riveting conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I have to say it was really fun researching you because I feel like I knew you or knew of you, but then I really got into the depths of who you are.
Mhm.
You're a real character on social media. You put out such great content. There's
Thank
just so much great information out there about you, but I also learned a lot about you. And, I always feel bad in these moments when I have a guest where I knew they were amazing, which is why I wanted to have you on the show. But then I really start to peel back the layers. Like your Wikipedia page is very long for what it's worth, and it's filled with accolades and accomplishments. So congratulations.
Thank you.
You are an amazing Canadian Olympic athlete. You've done amazing things. You're a 12-time Canadian champion.
Mhm.
You're only the fourth Canadian man to ever break the 10-second barrier. We'll come back to that.
Mhm.
You and Andre de Grasse are the only Canadians to run under 10 seconds in the 100-meter and under 20 seconds in the 200 meters. So you hold a lot of impressive records, and you have 3 Olympic medals. Like, you have one of each, so you don't even have to pick your favorite.
Well, we all know which one's my favorite, but
This is
I
fair.
see what you're saying.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say it. But I have to start. I'd be crazy not to start with this summer's Olympics in Paris.
Mhm.
I remember watching the 4x100 race with my 2 kids.
Mhm.
And I am definitely an Olympic fan. I have been since I was a kid. Anyone who's listened to my other podcasts with Olympic athletes, I'm just such a fan. I feel such immense pride watching. And I had tears in my eyes when you guys won that. I just had goosebumps. My kids were going nuts.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was like the underdog story or if there was something silent but deadly about you guys. I really love that kind of energy.
Mhm.
It was so amazing to watch you four win that gold medal, and I need to hear all about it. How did that feel?
Um, I mean, it was the most cathartic win I've probably
Mm.
ever had in my career because just the lead up to it, it was like everything that could go wrong was going wrong. Like I got sick in the lead up to the championships like a week out, and I had to take some days off. And then when I came back, I just wasn't in the same shape. I had all these doubts going into my individual events, false start in the 100. I got put in the repechage round in the 200 for the first time, which was a new experience. I had another round on my body, and if I'm not in peak shape and ready for that, like coming into it sharp, then that's gonna take some out of me. And I just wasn't able to get it done in the individual events, and things happened with my teammates as well. And we went into the relays like, all right, well, we can come together and try and do something. And we were the last team to make it into the finals, and if we're in the other heat, we actually wouldn't have made it in on our time. So it was like, okay, this just isn't our games. And um, that was kind of the mindset we had after the first day. But I remember Brendan woke up because we're in a room. It was me, Brendan, and Andre in the same room. And he woke up positive, like, hey guys, you ready to win the Olympics? And we're like, what's this guy talking about? Like, everything's going wrong. And this guy's talking about winning the Olympics. But slowly that energy started to like galvanize everybody else. And we slowly started to believe like, okay, yeah, we can do this. And then we got to the warm-up area and we did our warm-up pass like we normally do before we go into the stadium, and they looked good. And it's like, okay, we know how to run, we know how to do this, like we've been here a couple times. And then when we got into the car room, or right before we went to the car room, I gave a speech to the guys. Like I was fully committed at that point. And I just kind of said like, I use some profanity, which I'll refrain from here, but just kind of really hitting home and stressing the point, like, this is one shot. Like, We have
Yeah.
this one opportunity. Everything that's led up to this moment hasn't gone our way, and none of that will matter if we leave here Olympic champions. Nobody will remember that. Nobody will talk about that stuff. What they'll remember is this moment we came together and got it done for Canada. And I guess that speech resonated because we all came out there and did our thing on our legs. And, we ran like 38.3 in the first round and then dropped down to 37.5, which could have been even faster if I didn't miss Jerome's hand 2 times. That took away a couple tenths. So we could have ran even faster, which is crazy. But we just came together in the right moment. We were in lane 9, and it was just like, all right, we're in our own zone on the outside. Let's just focus on us and run like we know how to, because we've won before. In 2022, we won the World Championships when no one expected us to. We beat the U.S. on their own track, and it's like, all right, we got it in us. We've done it before. Let's make some magic, and that's exactly what happened. So after that win, you could just see me just going crazy, like celebrating, like yes, like it's one thing to picture yourself having success, but to actually go out there and put it down on the track and like play out exactly what you envisioned is just like wow. And like I said, like cathartic is the best way to
Yeah.
explain it, because the lead up was just so tumultuous, and then to have that like the sweetest victory at the end of the games for my last race of the games, it was just like wow. We left here and nothing else matters. That's just like the allegory of a career. And if you look back at like anybody's career, any elite athlete, top athlete, there's moments where they'll look back and be like, "Oh man, I wish I had this one back," or "This one didn't go this way, and it looks like this." But from the outside, looking at them, and you just think about all the achievements they've been able to rip off, you think it's just like this. But
Right.
really, everybody's career is all full of that, and that was just a representation of that in that moment.
It's so amazing. It's like, to your point, it's like a lesson for life, not just in sport, where sometimes things just don't go our way 1, 2, 3, 10, 20 times. And you think this is not meant for me. This is not, meant to be. And then that next time something just clicks. And to your point, it was something really magical about watching you guys come together. I know DeGrasse was injured. I know all of you were kind of struggling in your own way. Like you said, it was like, this was not our Olympics.
Yeah,
And then it was like, well, maybe this is like, there's no reason why we can't win this.
right.
And you guys, it's almost like you just made a decision. Like you had nothing to lose. We're going to go out there
Hmm.
and we're just going to do what we do. And in that moment, so I'm learning a little bit about how this all works. So you guys were in lane 9,
Yeah,
which you got because of how you ranked in the previous heats. Can you explain that a little bit? Like why you guys were in lane 9, which
yeah.
is the
So
outside lane?
right, so they give the winners of each heat preference, and so the preferred lanes are usually in the middle, on the races that are like that go around the track. So the fastest times from the heats and the time qualifiers, the big Qs as they call it, the ones that qualified based on place, they get the preferred lanes. And then they do a random draw for the small Qs, or the teams that qualified on time. Sorry, I have this backwards. The teams that qualified in place get to choose their lane, but it depends on where you
Okay.
finished. So we finished, what did we finish? Were we third in our heat? I think we're a third. So because we're a third, we get third preference pick. So there's
Okay.
2 semifinals, and it'll go like the winners of each heat get the preferred 2 lanes, which would be the middle. And then it goes the second place, they'll get their pick, and then the third place will get their pick. And then the small queues are usually on the bottom. So we got lane
Gotcha.
9 because it would be like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 going to first, second, second, and then third. So if we didn't place on time, we actually would have made the finals. Sorry, if we didn't place on place, if we
Right.
didn't finish on place, I think I got that right. If we didn't
Yeah.
finish
I get it.
third
Yeah.
place, we
Yeah.
wouldn't have made the finals because our time wasn't fast enough to qualify. So if you
Gotcha.
qualify on just time, then you get a small queue and you get a least preferred lane. So we're fortunate that even though we ran the slowest time going into the finals in the first round, we were still in position to have a big queue because we qualified by place instead of time. I hope that makes sense. I was
Yeah, yeah,
figuring it
and
out in
it's
real
funny
time.
to me because people say that outside lane is not a preferred, because you're saying the middle lanes are the preferred lanes, which makes
Yes.
no sense to me as an outsider watching because they seem crowded. They seem, I mean, that's where a lot of the chaos actually happened in this race. That's where the
Yep.
US was. And I mean, we can blame what lane they were in or we can just blame what happened. But I watching you guys on the outside, it just seemed like you had all the space in the world to run your own race. Like you were
Mhm.
almost just doing your own thing. And in fact, you're the leadoff leg. So you're the
Yeah.
first guy.
Yep.
And you, I mean, from what I can tell, I am no expert, but it seemed like you created quite the lead, as
Mhm.
is your role entails,
Mhm.
going into it with just so much space on the outside, like no one around you to be able to pull ahead.
Yeah.
Did it feel that way for you? Like, did you like being on the outside? Like, did you enjoy that space? Do you think that played into it at all?
I think it did because
Mm,
when you're in lane 9, it changes where you get the pass off, right? So like the
right.
zones are staggered based on your lane. And so us being on the furthest outside, our pass exchange zone is going to be on the straightaway, which is better for Jerome because you can accelerate better on a straightaway than you can on the curve.
Mm,
So because of that, we're able to stretch the zones a little bit, and create a little bit more space. And when you create space between the pass, the stick has more time to keep the speed up. So it's not
gotcha.
about how fast each runner is going. It's all about the pass and how fast the stick is traveling. So you want to get to a point where the incoming runner's speed matches the outgoing runner's speed, and that's how the stick never slows down. And
And that's
so
easier to do on a straightaway.
it's easier to do on the straight. It's easier to
Gotcha.
accelerate. And Jerome's a top end guy, so he's a big guy. We call him the Moose, and he needs some time to get going. And once he gets going, he's
Yeah.
gonna fly. But like usually, he doesn't really get out very hard. So a lot of times,
Right.
I'll run up into him, and so that we'll have to open up our steps so that he has more time to accelerate. But because he was starting on the straightaway, he got up to his speed a lot quicker, which was great for us. And then the other part too is I was in lane 9 and you run blind. All of us ran blind. So we don't know where we are in proximity to everybody else in the race. But because of that, our focus is solely paid attention
Yes.
to execution, just running to our guy, passing, and not worrying about anybody else. Like all the chaos, like you said, happened on the lower lanes. And sometimes it's good to be in the mix because you want to keep an eye on somebody that's a quality team so that you know, like, okay, we're in contention, we're beating them. But sometimes that can be a distraction. And so
Yeah.
we chose to use that as something that would be to our advantage, that we're not going to see anybody. We're just going to run and focus on ourselves. And it paid off because honestly, when I passed the baton, I didn't know if I passed it off in first, if I was in last, if I got caught by the incoming runner, if I created distance, and none of that mattered. Honestly, it was just about
Right.
getting to Jerome as fast as I could and giving him the stick. And then I'm first leg. So once I pass the baton, I have nothing else to do other than to cheer. So I immediately turn around and I watch the Jumbotron. And as we kept going, I'm like, okay, we're still in there. We're still there. Um, and then by the time Andre got, I'm like, we're like either first or second. And the guys that are tied with us, I'm like, I know he can beat them. Even if he's not 100%, I know he can beat them. It's the other guys that are behind us that I was worried about, like Great Britain and South Africa.
Right.
So they were coming, but they didn't have enough space. So I'm like, Andre can do this. Like he can bring this in. And then when he crossed the line, that's just when I go into euphoria and just like go
So
into a frenzy.
so it wasn't until like Andre kind of was in his space that you realize you have a real shot at this because you guys were running blind up until that point, just doing your best, doing your part
Well,
until, and it's so funny because there's the video that shows Rodney yelling at DeGrasse at
yeah,
the end. Like, I don't know
yeah,
what he was saying. I don't even know if it's appropriate for
yeah,
this show to say what he was saying, but
yeah,
it's almost like he knew because I all of a sudden he was in the thick of it. He was
yeah,
like the first guy at that moment when they passed it off where you could see people on, I guess your left side.
yeah,
And all of a sudden it was like, oh, wait a minute, we're in this. Like
yeah.
finally you had a sense of where you were at compared to your competition. And do you know what he was yelling? Did it ever come out what he was saying?
I never asked, but I just have a general sense he was just saying go, go, because that's
Yeah.
usually
Oh yeah.
when you pass the baton, you just yell like go, like you're just like trying to use your
Yeah.
voice to like
Propel
buoy them
them.
to like faster speeds, like just go. You almost want to like push them, and that go is like
Yes.
a verbal push, you know. But yeah, it's deceptive because angle wise, like depending on what camera you see, you can't really tell where the race is until the very end, right? So like because of the staggers and the camera angles, sometimes
Yeah,
you
and
look
it goes
like
by
you're
so
winning.
fast.
Yeah,
Yeah, it goes
exactly.
by so
Sometimes it looks like you're
fast.
winning and really
Yeah,
you're not, or sometimes you look like you're behind, but really when it actually unfolds into a camera angle
yeah,
where you can like tell, then you're like, oh, we're actually winning. And so that's what it was. It was
amazing.
like I knew we were doing really well and Jerome was going well. And then when Brendan got it, it looked like we were ahead. But I'm like, okay, we're in lane 9. So once the stagger unfolds, maybe we're actually not ahead. But then when Andre got it, I'm like, no, we're in this. We're in the front. And that's when I started to like get excited and I was running towards the finish line so I could meet Andre. Um, and the like I saw him cross the line first and I'm like, yes, like I knew we did it, like definitively.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And so you did the thing you set out to do. Maybe the journey there was not what you were expecting. You guys
Right.
pulled it off.
Mhm.
What do you do? What does one do after they win a gold medal at the Olympics? Like I would imagine that was at the top of your bucket list your
Yeah.
entire life.
Yeah.
How did you celebrate? What was life like? Like let's first of all, let's talk celebration. How did you guys celebrate?
Uh, to be honest, I had a drug test after, so that
Oh,
kind
that
of
sounds
put a
fun.
damper on things because first we had to go through a huge gauntlet of media. So what happens is there's the
Yeah.
mix zone when you leave, and it's like this uh a tunnel, I guess, not tunnel, like
Yeah.
they make a makeshift like walkway, and it goes up, and then you go all the way up, and then you come all the way down. So there's just media all around the world as you go by, and normally, like CBC will stop us, like any Canadian outlets will stop us, and maybe like a World Athletics or something like that. But when we win gold, everyone wants to talk to us. So like
Yes.
literally everyone's like, hey, from all over the world, Africa, Australia, uh, France, everyone, they want to talk to us. Um, so we're trying to talk to as many as we can, but we know we have the medal ceremony, so we got to get back and get our clothes, get our podium gear on, and get ready for that. And like we have a certain time we have to be back. So we're trying to be as polite as we can. We're the Canadian team. We're trying to be nice and talk to everybody, but
Like,
um,
sorry,
we,
sorry,
okay,
sorry, we
guys,
have to
like,
go. Yeah.
yeah, we're like, all right, we'll do one more, and then we're gonna tell everybody else no, and then we're like, okay, okay, okay. So then we go and then they're like, please, 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 and then one of us would be like, oh, this person's really nice, or oh, I know this person, I talked to him
I'm sure
before.
that
Let's
worked out
do
really
more.
well for you guys having to say
Yeah, yeah,
no.
yeah.
Aw,
So we did as many as we can. But and once you do so many interviews saying the same kind of things, it kind of gets a little repetitive. So then we finally get out of there. We end up just like ducking our heads and running. And we're like, sorry, sorry. And then we finally get down and meet Caroline. She helps us like talk to the media and stuff. And actually,
amazing.
underneath the tunnel, there's more media. So once we get through the mix zone up top, there's more underneath. We get through that, navigate a couple of those, and then we get to where the car room is with our clothes. So we get our clothes back on. I'm the only one that has doping, so everyone else gets to go back to the warm up area to get the podium gear because we gave it to our team staff, and someone has to bring it for me. So I can't leave the site of my doping agent.
Right.
He has to
And
stick
did you
with me.
know you had to do this going into the race, or was
No,
this like a random, "Hey, you,
random.
congratulations, come with me"?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it
Oh.
happens afternoon, and you don't know. Like you see them with their clipboard, and you're like, oh, who's it gonna be? And then it's
Oh,
like
no.
Aaron Brown. I'm like, damn. Like, why is it me?
You're like, "No, I've never heard of the guy before."
Yeah, I
He
know. I'm
sounds
like,
great.
who? But yeah. So I had to stay behind, and we ended up having this time where I didn't have enough time to go to do the doping test before the before the medal ceremony. So I'm like, I have to go really bad. Like I'm drinking water to get ready, but I can't go yet.
Oh,
So like we go
no.
through the whole ceremony, and like I have to go like super bad. So the minute we get off the podium, like we get our medals, we sing the national anthem, say like what's up to the crowd and acknowledge that, take a couple pictures. I beeline. I'm like, I have to go right now.
You're like, "Where's
Um,
that lady with the clipboard? I
yeah,
need to see
seriously.
them now." Yeah.
So then we get to the doping control and there's like a huge queue. I'm like, I'm gonna like go on the floor right now if I don't get in right now.
Oh,
So like
no.
they get me through and then I finally, get to do my test. And then
I have a
after that,
question. Are you wearing your gold medal during this time?
no, I took it off because I didn't.
Oh, okay.
If I was wearing it through, I knew people would want to see it and take pictures and say congrats.
Right.
But I'm like, I don't want any distractions. Like, I need to get this done. Like, at that moment, I forgot I had just won the Olympics and achieved like a lifetime goal because I just had to go that bad. But
That's hilarious.
yeah, as soon as I finish that, we all get on the bus and go back. and it's super late because like this takes a lot of time. So we get on the bus, go back to the village, and we just go get some food. Like we were in the back of the in the village, just eating kind of together, and it's really late. There's not many people out, and of course, everyone that sees us is saying like, "Congrats, that was amazing," and all that stuff. And then we went back to our room and we were just chilling. So we didn't really do much that night. We were all kind of exhausted because it was like in the middle of the night. You know, we didn't get back to like I don't know 2 a.m. or something like that.
Oh
But
yeah.
then we go through our messages and our phones are all blowing up and stuff like that. We check our social media, and then we find out that we have a whole bunch of media to do the next day. So we get as much sleep as we can, and then the entire next day we're just at the Canada House doing media all day long.
Amazing.
So yeah, we really didn't celebrate until the night of the next day. Um, and then we just celebrated with everyone else that was going out. You know, we just went to downtown Paris at some club and had a good time.
That's amazing. It's
Yeah.
so funny because I find celebrating, and I've talked about this on the show before, right? Like people are seeking success and they want to achieve these big things. And then when you achieve them, it's like, well, did you celebrate? Or,
Mhm.
sometimes we only think of celebrating the big things. And this
Yeah.
might possibly be the biggest thing that's happened to you.
Mhm.
And, to your point, you had to delay the celebrating. And then it wasn't like this huge, it was a huge deal, but it's just so funny that, we find these ways to celebrate and we put all this emphasis on things.
Yeah.
And this was a massive moment. I have to ask though, because there was a little bit of, I'm not going to say controversy, but a little bit of buzz around your US teammate, Noah Lyles, making a comment about the men's 4x100 before the race. Now, for people who don't know, he's a decorated Olympian himself, and he got COVID. He couldn't compete in the 4x100. But going into that race, I guess a reporter asked him about the Canadian team, and he just kind of replied, "Who?" as if, you guys were not relevant in that conversation. Um, I think I loved your moment in winning so much more because it's just what we do as Canadians. We're just silent and deadly, and we show up and do our thing. What
Mhm.
did that feel like? Did the U.S. press also want to talk to you after that? Did that ever come up again?
Yeah. So he originally made that comment at the World Relays. That was back in
Oh,
May.
okay.
Yeah. So they won the World Relays and we were second. And then
Gotcha.
they asked him afterwards, like, "Hey, Noah Lyles, how does it feel with your budding rivalry with the Canadians?" And then he was like, "Who?" And then he's like, "Canada." And he's like, "Who?" And then he
Oh,
realized, like, oh, he's like trying to downplay us. So we heard that from back in May, and I remember whoever runs the admin of Athletics Canada's social media page, they posted that and they showed like a rewind clip of when we beat them in 2022, saying like, "This is who, like, don't disrespect us."
yeah.
And then in the comments, I just put like, there's a Cam Newton gif where he just like, "Okay, like I'll see you guys." Like, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna wait for it. And then we fast forwarded. I actually forgot that he said that until Jerome told us on our victory lap. And then Jerome just came up to me and he's like, "Hey B, who?" And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Who?" I was like, "Oh yes." And he's like, "I'm saying something." And so a couple of people did ask us about that because I guess
Yeah.
Athletics Canada posted it again that he said that, and then everybody started asking about it. Like, "Oh, did you see what Noah said? Did you?" And then a lot of people were asking me more about what Noah said, and he didn't even run, than what like about the other Americans that actually did run. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Poor guy.
But yeah, I mean, he he does what he can to drum up interest in the sport, and that could be
Right.
controversial, but that's what sells, and he does a good job at that. So
Fair.
whether it's the Who or world champions of what, like a lot of people were talking about Noah Lyles for other things other than track, and that's a
Right.
good thing if you want to grow the sport. So he's happy to play that kind of villain role or that controversial figure role, and he does it well. So
Yeah.
but it's always fun to beat those people.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know who else was very excited about your win was Donovan Bailey.
Hmm.
For a man who just had his, title taken away from him as being the last kind of one of the 4x100 men to win gold back in, was that 96 that him and the guys won?
Hmm.
His reaction to your win, I mean, I don't know, you've probably seen it by now. He was, watching on a teleprompter, probably back because he was also doing some commentating.
Hmm.
He jumped out of his chair. The chair went flying. He was so excited. Did he share any words with you afterwards? What was it like? Because I'm sure you watched him growing up. What was that
Yeah.
moment like?
It was a full circle moment because the first track athlete I ever knew about was Donovan Bailey, and
Wow.
I saw the race that where he broke the world record and the face he made, the expression. I've seen that, like, it's like etched in my brain. I've seen it so many times. And I remember when I was younger, um, I had like a math textbook, and in it was like a math problem, like, how they make you calculate like random things. One of them was to calculate his speed in the 100 meters or something like that. So like my memories of Donovan was like he was the fastest. Canada won the Olympics, even though it happened in '96, and this is way past that. Um, that was my first memories of track and field, and part of the reason why I knew about the Olympics and like running and stuff was because of what they did, and to be able to be that for the next generation is really, really special. Um, I did a visit to my middle school in Bowmore a couple days ago, and a lot of people were saying that like you guys are the new fast four, and like the next generation's gonna see you guys and what you did and want to be that for themselves. So like you helped carry on the legacy, and yeah, like I said, it's a full circle moment. He's been following us for a while. He's always been supportive and sends words of encouragement. He wants to see us do well. He wants to see us surpass what they did and challenges us and stuff like that. So now that we got the Olympic gold, the best thing we can do is to win another one. That's something that even they weren't able to accomplish. So that would be pretty iconic.
That's amazing. I love hearing about this. I mean, I do want to go back and talk about, young Aaron and how this all started, because I'm always so fascinated with, people's journeys to get to where they are. But I do have one question. I love asking Olympians this specific question. Where do you keep your medals?
They're right beside me. I have a trophy case.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Sometimes the answers are terrible. Like our mutual friend Felicia, she doesn't even know where hers are.
That's wow. That's crazy.
No, but she basically said, because it's a symbol for her to, you know, it was never about the medal per se for her. It was about the journey. And she
Okay.
articulates it really well on our podcast. But she says it brings everyone else so much joy. And that's when she
Yeah.
pulls it out, right? She goes, I
Yeah.
pull it out because it brings everyone else so much joy and so much pride. So she's happy
Yeah.
to share it.
I get
But
that.
for her, it's just one moment in
Yeah.
this large journey that she was on. So I
Yeah,
get
I
that
resonate
for
that because
sure.
it represents one moment in time, and even though that's the thing that everyone wants to go to and gravitate towards, like what led to it, and you have the entire
Right.
picture. So it's just like a really special moment in the whole tapestry of your career. Um,
Fair.
but I have to bring mine to so many events that like I can't lose it. Like everyone always says, "Oh, bring the medal, we have to see
Of
it."
course.
So yeah,
Of
so
course. Yeah.
I know exactly where it is. This is right there.
Right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's go back a little bit. You grew up in Toronto,
Mhm.
and did you always, is this something you always wanted to be when you grew up? Did you know you wanted to be an athlete, a professional athlete?
Mhm.
How did you get into sport?
Yeah, I got into sport really young, because my parents just wanted to burn off my energy. I was a high energy kid that
Sounds
was just bouncing
familiar.
off the walls. Yep. And they just put me in sports just to get that energy out. And I started in t-ball, then I started playing soccer, and I played that for a really long time. And I thought that was going to be my sport because
Mm.
my gift was always speed. And so the strategy on my teams was always kick the ball far, let Aaron run down the wings, and then go shoot at the goalie. Just pass the ball behind the defense, let Aaron go get it, and then shoot. And then when I got to high school, I was in the beat program at Birchmount, and they have a rule where the sport that you join up with, you can't play for the school team. So my sport was soccer. That was my club team. So I couldn't play soccer for the school team,
Ah,
um,
interesting.
which actually ended. I stopped playing soccer after that. I was just like, all right, I'll be done with club soccer, and I can't play it for the school, so I'll just do something else. So then I became like the basketball player guy. That was my thing. I played club basketball, played for the school team, um, and I ran track, but it was just like another thing to do. Like it wasn't like anything I was taking seriously. I always thought like, okay, I'm going to be a professional soccer player. Then I was a professional basketball player, and then finally I play football as well, but I dropped basketball because I just had too many things on my plate. I got more serious with track and football. We went to the Metro Bowl finals my senior year in high school, and in track. Once I started like winning medals on the global stage, that became like, okay, this is my calling. Like I know this is my thing. And it wasn't until my club coach in track, Bill Stevens, he said, "Hey, come out to the club team. You could be really good. You can get a scholarship if you just take this thing seriously, train a little bit harder. You can go really far. And he was willing to pay my club dues. So I was like, all right, if he believes in me this much, I'll give it a shot for this summer. Because the summer is always when I like hang out with friends and stuff like that. But
Right.
I dropped my time from 10-9 to 10-7 that summer. And then I was like, all right, if I actually spend a full season of training, what could that look like? And that following year in grade 11 is when I went to the World Youth Championships, the under 18 World Championships. And I finished second in the 100 in the world. And
Wow.
after that, like my entire life just changed because, I'd won OFSA golds and stuff like that, but winning a medal on the international stage like really puts you on the map. And so all the NCAA scholarships or schools were offering me scholarships and wanted me to come on visits. My notoriety just blew up. Like when I went to track meets after that, everyone looked
Wow.
at me like I was a celebrity. Like they're like whispering and like, oh, there he goes. And then it's just
That's
like,
amazing.
what is happening? Like it's just like I'm just stumbling through this thing. I don't really know what I'm doing. Um, but yeah, I went to college after that, was a 8-time All-American, and then became a professional athlete, which I'm still doing to this day. But it all started because, Bill convinced me to come out for the team and join that summer.
It's an amazing thing when other people see gifts in us that sometimes we
Yeah,
don't see in ourselves. Like sometimes you
right.
just need someone to tee you up and to be like, "Trust me, this is good for you, or this is really going to work out for you." And it takes a little bit of a leap of faith. And to your point, had he not kind of bet on you and shown you the way, I mean, who knows where life would have taken you? Thank goodness that he
Yeah,
did. I mean, in my opinion, it's a sign of a great leader is when a leader sees something in someone that maybe they don't see themselves and helps them
exactly.
find their way there. And on that topic of leadership, because this is a leadership podcast, you kind of alluded a little bit to your role on the team earlier when you gave the guys a pep talk before the big race.
Hmm.
You and I had to confirm this by go back and watching the intro to the race. You were one of the oldest guys racing that
Yeah,
day in the 4x100. I mean, at 32 years old, you were a veteran, and I mean, there were some really young 20 somethings there.
yeah.
It's very impressive. Like you and Rodney were the same age.
Hmm.
Do you see yourself as a leader on the team, and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I'm definitely a leader on the team, and it's funny because it wasn't something that I was like, I want to be the leader. I'm
Right.
the leader. I'm the captain. Like, listen to me. Like, that's never been my position. If anything, I always like, I want to be one of the guys, just hang out, and I'll lead by example. That was always my thing. But I remember, I don't know exactly when, but might have been before Tokyo. But Glenroy came up to me and he's like, "Hey, we need some leadership on this team because
Mm.
the older guys that I grew up with, that were like the veterans of the team, they were starting to get fizzled out and retire and move on to other things. There just wasn't as fast enough making teams." And he's like, "You've been on this team since you were 20." And you have all the experience in the world. You've been at the highest stage. You know what it's like to be there. You got to help these guys along and give them some words of encouragement, be in their corner, let them know that like we can do this. And I just became a leader by necessity. It was just like there was a void there. Like some people just don't want to be vocal, and that's just not their style. um and I feel like those who have the knowledge and know how to articulate those should be the ones in position of leadership, because they know exactly what to say to rally the troops, to galvanize everybody, to get them to believe, to get them on the same page. And there was times where, you know, things could have went other ways, right? Like if we didn't have veteran leadership in place, myself, Rodney, Andre, guys that were like, okay, we got to commit. Like we can't go out here and mess around in practice. We actually have to show up, put in the work, study what we're doing wrong. We have a huge opportunity ahead of us, but if we don't like take this thing seriously, we're going to squander it. And there are some opportunities we did miss because we weren't completely dialed in. And I just wanted to make sure that this wasn't one of those, despite the fact that all of us didn't have the proper lead up to the finals in the relay. We had our meeting before the finals. And in all those meetings, our biomechanic guy, Dana Way, he always videotapes the races and he'll dissect like, okay, these are the times between each zone. These are those leg speeds, like to the 80-meter zone. And then the zone times, which is the time between the zone exchange, how long it took you to get from to one exchange to the next. And just crunching the numbers, he said, even with mediocre leg speeds running your 80-meter splits, if you guys just maximize what you can do between the zones, you guys can run, I think he said 37:50, like on the dot. And that's exactly
Wow.
what we ran. And
Wow.
it's funny because our leg speeds were faster, and our zone times weren't as good as they could have been, which means we can go even faster. Like he was just calculating based on our slow zone time or leg speed times from the prelims, but we all got juiced up and ran faster in the finals. So that changed it a bit, but it just goes to show, like, when you break it down simply and you see the numbers, you could start to believe, like, this is something achievable. We can go
Mhm.
faster. And once that was a possibility, that's all I need to see. Is I just need to see a glimmer of hope, and then I can disseminate that message to everybody else. I'm like, once you make me believe, and the staff know that, make me believe as the leader, and I'll get everybody else to believe as well. And it wasn't just me. Like I said, Brendan was the one that started it, and it just permeated through everybody else, even the guys that didn't run, like our subs. Like, they're believing in us, and, like, they would love to be out there on the track, but, like, we got to do it for you guys, like, to let them know, like, okay, you guys made the right decision. And yeah, it just, leadership is just something that helps you maximize the moment and get everybody on the same page, and that's what the relay is all about. And I think other teams that struggle with running well in the relay are teams that lack that veteran leadership. It's not just about speed; it's all about, like, being able to buy into a program, commit to it, practice, have that work ethic, be on the same page, and all do it for the next person. And that starts with the message that leads to congruency and getting everybody to buy in.
Yeah. I I mean, you said something right off the bat that's kind of my life's mission, is that I don't think any people set out to be leaders. Some do. I think people figure out their gifts early on and really want to lean to it. But I think there's so many people out there in the world who are these natural leaders, to your
Right.
point, who just have this way of rallying people and teeing people up and,
Mhm.
seeing the good and spreading the good in their own way without the titles, without the formal recognition.
Mhm.
And I mean, that was a big motivation for this podcast, was just to tell the stories of people who, in my opinion, are leaders, but they're from all walks of life with all
Right.
different stories. I mean, I've interviewed CEOs, refugees, Olympic athletes, Paralympic athletes. Um, but the common denominator is that they are showing up to tee up other people through the work that they do, and it has a ripple effect. And just in talking to you, you obviously have the mindset, right, to be an Olympic athlete. If anyone follows the work you do on social media, which I highly recommend they do, you're a great follow. There's great content. Um, but I want to talk a little bit about the physical part of it, because you kind of talked about it a little bit, where your biomechanics coach broke down the physicality and what it's going to take physically to achieve this beyond just the mental focus.
Mhm.
What do you credit your physical success to over the last 32 years, and being, still very competitive? I mean, I hate to say at your age, but at your age,
Yeah.
what do you credit your physical success to?
Yeah. It's a culmination of things, right? Like, I'm very fortunate that I had, at an early age, the right people around me who taught me the game, taught me what it takes to not only be successful in that year, but have lasting success. Like, a lot of people are
Mm,
in the pans, and then you never hear from them again. But I didn't want to be one of those people. I wanted to have a long career and really give myself as many opportunities as I could to reach success. And if the first two Olympic medals were something that was like the pinnacle for me, and then I just wasn't able to keep myself in peak physical form, then I wouldn't have the opportunity to go to Paris, right? So it's just about keeping yourself in shape to give yourself more opportunities to go out there and try and seize them. But like I said, the more I was in the sports, the more game I got, the more knowledge I got. I bumped shoulders with legends in the sports, a lot of people that gave me game. And that's why I try to pass it down to the next generation, because not everybody's fortunate enough to have that. And so I try to make it accessible to more people by talking about that on my platforms and the program that I run with the Pro Sprinter Blueprint. Um, but it's all about just taking care of your body. And that's not just like physically. That's obviously a huge component, like keeping injuries down with prehab, not waiting until something goes wrong to fix it, but to
mm,
prehab something. If you have imbalances, if you have improper movement somewhere, if you have weak spots, you don't want to have a weak link in the chain. So you always want to constantly, like, attack those problems before they become actual problems. Because availability is the best ability in sports. If you can't go out there and run, what's the point? You can have all the
Oh, I
time in
like
the world.
that. Say that again. Availability is the best ability.
Yeah.
Oh, that's like a good life message too. I'm gonna
Yeah,
write
yeah.
that down.
Yeah, you gotta show up. You gotta get in the game to
Yeah,
win the
true.
game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, keeping the injuries low. But taking care of your body is not just massages and seeing the chiropractor and stuff like that, stretching, proper warm ups. It's also your nutrition, what you put in your body,
Mhm.
because like they say, you are what you eat. So if you're using poor gasoline to fuel your car, then you're gonna eventually break down. But if you're using premium, high quality gas, then um, you get more mileage out of it and the tank runs a lot smoother. So, what you eat is so critical. Sleep is a huge thing.
Mhm.
We want to prioritize that as much as you can. Um, and the older you get, these things matter more. So, in order to maintain the same physical stature that I was from, let's say, 6 years ago, uh, I got to step my game up each year. So, I get stricter with my diet. I start to cut things out. I try to prioritize sleep a little bit more. I take a little bit more time warming up and stretching and stuff like that. I spend a little bit more time and money on my body in terms of like quality care and making sure that everything is tweaked and ready to go just to give myself the opportunity to go out there and compete. And a lot of people don't think it's worth it. Like, if you say like, hey, you might get 0.05% better if you do this, that might not move the needle for someone. They might not think it's worth it. But for me, I'm looking for every legal advantage I could get. So if it's above code and I'm allowed to do it, I'm going to try and do it because I'm trying to
Mhm.
get as many advantages as possible just to compete with the other people who aren't taking advantage of those things. Um, so that gives me an edge.
Yeah, it's amazing you said that because on my previous podcast, I had a friend on who's a VP of high performance for the Chicago Blackhawks. He's also a sports scientist.
Mm,
And he's like, people are always asking me, like, what's the secret to high performance? Because he works with a lot of elite athletes, professionals, Olympians. And he said, like, first of all, it's foundation. Like, you have to do the foundation things right. If you want to start moving the needle, and he said exactly that, like, there's things you can do to have a 1% increase,
hmm
but that 1% only works if you're doing all the other 99% of the things, right? So it's like
Exactly.
building the strong foundation and then figuring out where you can get that extra 1% here and there. And to your point, some people only focus on the 1% and get really into these biohacking trends and think that it's going to have this huge
Yeah.
impact,
Yeah.
but they only work if you're doing the other 99% of things. And so
hmm
I suspected your answer would be around this regimented lifestyle that you have. But I did also read on the internet, because I believe everything I read on the internet, that you also love cheat meals. It's one of your
Yeah.
favorite pastimes. So I have to ask, when you're allowed and it permits, what is your favorite cheat meal that you allow yourself to have?
Um, I love ramen. So, I mean, that's not even
Mm,
really like a terrible cheat meal. So that's kind of a bad pick, but um, ramen is always a thing I love to eat. Chicken wings is probably my favorite food of all time. So, like, the more out of the season, like right now, I'm in the off season, so I can eat kind of what I want. So I could eat as much greasy food as I want, and I love chicken wings. I actually like them grilled, which is not too bad for you.
yeah.
But I
Yep.
might sauce them up a little bit more now that I'm in the off
Yeah.
season than I would when I'm in season. I love
Amazing.
pizza, um,
Hmm.
and I think more than the cheap meals, it's just like the cheat like desserts that I like.
Okay.
I'm a big cookie guy. I like some
Yeah.
cookies. I like cupcakes. Um, yeah, those are like my favorite two. Just cake in general. Like a good cheesecake. Yeah, I like
We're
exploring
gonna
the
have to do a
different
whole
restaurants.
podcast on all your favorite foods, because I can
Yeah.
just see the look on your face. You could talk about this for hours.
Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. And the thing
That's
is, like,
amazing.
as much as I like it, it tastes that much better when you are disciplined and don't have it all the time. Like the law of
Right.
diminishing returns. I think
Yeah.
it works in the inverse as well. Like when you don't have something, it builds up the anticipation, and when you finally have it, it's like wow, like you savor it a little bit more. And you like earn it. And I feel
Yep.
like the satisfaction of how good it tastes combined with the fact that you waited and earned it to eat it, like the delayed gratification is like my favorite thing.
It's so true, and I think people struggle with that, right? That
Yeah.
idea of, I mean, we could talk about this all the day about food restriction and different protocols that people follow, but I think at the end of the day, you should enjoy food. You should enjoy your life.
Mhm.
But there's really something that comes with maybe delaying that gratification to enjoy it more or have the ability to enjoy it more.
Mhm.
So, you also are a dad. You have 2 young kids at home. Do they have any idea what you do for a living?
My son does. My daughter doesn't
Okay.
yet. She's not old enough. She just turned 1 not too long ago. But, my son, he's been in the game for a while now. He's been to some track meets. He has run some lollipop races too at some of the meets that I've been at, so he's got to run as well. And then he saw daddy run, and he's like, "Wow, daddy, you can go so fast." And now when we watch TV, like he knows how to point me out. Sometimes he gets me. I mean, I think he's pretty good now, but before he used to get me confused with a couple other people who are also wearing headbands. Because that's how I stood out. Is I always wear a headband, and he'll be like, "Daddy," and his mom's like, "Nope, nope, not dad. That's someone else."
Wrong
But
guy. Yeah.
yeah, now he's pretty good. He travels with my wife to a couple of my meets, and yeah, he enjoys it. He's in the
Yeah.
stands and he's trying to understand like the different events and stuff like that. Like I think the 100 and 200 are pretty straightforward, so he knows my events, but like he's learning like the pole vault and stuff. And he got to watch Mondo Duplantis break the world record, and so now anytime he sees the pole vault and someone clears it, he's like world record, and it's like nope. What you
No.
saw was special. It's not a world record every
Yeah.
time.
Aw,
Um, but yeah,
that's
he loves
amazing.
track and field, so yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's
As
good.
they get older, they get a better understanding.
It's gonna be so fun. I remember my daughter and I mean, my dad and I used to have races all the time, and it was always
Mhm.
so fun. I mean, he would beat me all the time, and I think he still beats me, and now he races my kids, and he beats them, and but there was a time a couple years ago when my daughter started to beat me in races, and
Mm,
I can't wait for the day when your kids realize that they may not be able to smoke you in races because
yeah.
that might be or maybe one day they will,
And they
and that
will.
might be
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. And just like with the desserts, if they could beat me off the rip, it wouldn't be as satisfying as when they actually can beat me, like,
Oh, yeah.
whenever it is, 50, 60, I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, Whenever they can beat me, then it's like we earn that, and they're probably gonna celebrate in my face, and
Yeah,
I'll let them,
speaking of
you know?
celebrations, yeah,
Yeah.
I hope you make them work for it, okay?
Oh, of course, of course.
Don't just hand out those wins.
Oh, no, 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 no,
That
no.
would not be fair to them at
No,
all.
no.
So, women get asked this question a lot, but I'm gonna ask you. I mean, how do you juggle all of this in terms of your career, your family?
Mhm.
You have a wonderful budding career in keynote speaking and getting out there on stages. And I've seen some of your work on the internet. I haven't seen you live. You're incredibly engaging. Obviously, people are probably getting that from this conversation too. You have a lot to share.
Yeah.
How do you manage that schedule?
Uh, so time management is like one of the best skills you can learn as a human being, and it's
Mm,
even more relevant in our sport. And yeah, like you said, not a lot of people talk about it from the male perspective, because a lot of times the female will take on the brunt of the work. The moms are the superheroes, right? But I try, because I grew up in a household with both my parents, and I saw them both work extremely hard to raise us. So I try to do that the same,
mm,
and I don't allow my job to deter me from trying to be the best father I can be. And sometimes
mm.
it's tough because it's conflicting,
Yeah.
right? Like when you're a parent, you know how they say, like, when you get married, it's like two becomes one. That's like the marriage math. I feel
Sure.
like when you become a parent, it's like one becomes zero. So like I fall
I
behind the
feel
kids. Like,
suddenly outnumbered in every
yeah,
way. Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, you got to make sure that the kids are good before you are good yourself.
Yeah.
But that goes directly against what you have to be as a professional athlete. Like, you have to put yourself first. Like, you have to make sure that you're taking care of yourself day in and day out, and making sure that Aaron Brown, the athlete, is being taken care of. So sometimes it's like opposing ideologies, and I have to juggle it and say, like, okay, if I choose, to take my parent or my kids to the park, for example, and it's like 95 degrees out, Fahrenheit. So was that like 30 something Celsius? Um, is that going to affect me for tomorrow's practice? So sometimes I have to make a compromise.
Right.
Like, okay, maybe I'll go when the sun's down, or all right, I'll go for a little bit and I'll wear a hat and I'll stick in the shade and I'll bring some water so I can
Mm.
hydrate. Some days it's like, all right, it's not going to kill me. I can get away with it. Or some days I'm like, you know what? Let's do something else. Let's do something in the house. And even if like, Dad, please, please, we just want to go to the park or whatever. I'm like, okay, how about this? It's a little bit more something my speed that I can handle. Or I might just hang back and let my wife take it. So it's just choosing your battles, and it helps the older they get because they can understand, like, hey, like daddy needs
Yes.
to rest right now, and we can make those compromises, and not just say like, hey, like I might not be able to do this now, but later on I can do this, and they'll be okay. And they want the best for me, and my wife wants the best for me, so she steps up in a huge way, takes on a lot of responsibility, and I really appreciate and love her for that. And because of that, I try to give back when I can. So maybe when I have some free time, instead of like watching a Netflix show by myself, or doing something else, that diving into some more social media posts or something, I might choose to actively be in the family, and hang out with them. And I know they appreciate my presence and when I'm around, so I try to do it as much as I can when I can. But it's a balance, and everyone just
Yeah.
has to be on the same page.
Yeah, it takes a village, as we know, and especially competing at this level in athletics, it's a full-time job. Like with a lot of people, if you're running a business, right? It's almost like the full whole family has to be on board with,
Exactly.
running the business, the commitment that it takes. I mean, it involves everybody.
Yeah.
And the sooner everyone can figure out the part that they play and how valuable that is, that
Hmm.
it's incredibly, I think, rewarding for everybody to feel like they contributed.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you have a healthy relationship with sacrifice. I like asking these
Yeah.
questions of high
Yes.
performance people, right? Because I think it takes a certain level of sacrifice or prioritization that could probably be hard, or from the outside. We talked about sacrifice around food and diet and exercise, but also around family time and personal
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you have a healthy relationship with that.
Yeah. And sacrifice, like what you're willing to sacrifice, lets you know how motivated you are to achieve your goal. Like if something is too hard to get rid of, like if you said like, hey, you really got to get rid of candy this next season. If you're not willing to do that, then I don't think you want it bad enough. Um, and then sometimes, it's as hard as it is. Sometimes you have to sacrifice doing certain things with your family and not being able to be there all the time. Like my wife takes my son to Disney all the time, and I don't have a pass because I'm like, I just know I won't be able to use it enough to make it worth it. And as much as they would love me to come, they understand. And so like
Yeah.
I'll stay home with Autumn, my daughter, and we'll hang out, and I'll be with her while she can take my son so they can go on all the rides and stuff like that. um but it's just things like that, and I don't want to miss too many in my life, but I know there's some I won't be able to do everything, right? Like there's some
Yeah.
things I'm just gonna have to give up, and it goes both ways. Some things in track and field I have to give up. Like I can't sleep for 12 hours a day and get like maximum rest, because like I also have to contribute as a father and a husband.
Yeah.
So I just have
Yeah.
to pick and choose, like, okay, I'll do this, all right, I'll do this. And planning and time management all plays a huge factor.
Yeah. And I got some great advice from a friend recently. She's the CEO and founder of her own company. And she just said, I just include my kids in
Yeah.
things, right? So,
Yeah.
like you said, like I go to the park and maybe one day you'll bring your kids to the gym with you or the track
Yeah.
with you and they'll
Right.
run. And, maybe you already do that. But it's
Hmm.
it's almost finding a way to incorporate our kids into the things and the things that we're passionate about so they can see us in our element
Hmm.
and see that, the sacrifices are actually investments in future rewards and investments in our future selves. And I think kids are often digesting what's caught, not taught. So we can sit here and lecture them on how we want them to be and the lessons we want them to learn. But if they just see us doing what we do, that'll be
Hmm.
the greatest lesson that they can
Absolutely.
that they can pick up.
Yeah.
So where do you go from here? You already kind of mentioned it about wanting to win another gold medal, that you're focused on the next Olympics, which is in LA, which is where you went to school. So it's a little bit of a homecoming for you.
Yep.
Could that potentially be where you win your gold and then sign off and say, I'm out of here?
That's the plan. That's the storybook ending.
Nice.
And as we know, things don't always go to the plan, but I'm trying to stick to that plan as much as possible, and I'm taking it year by year. Um, but I can't see myself going beyond that. Like at that point, I would be to 5 Olympics. I'd be 36. My kids would be
Oh
a
my
lot older,
gosh.
and I just have so many other passions that I'm passionate about, that I want to pursue after my career in track and field. And I feel like by then they should be developed to a point where I'm ready to like go into them full time. Um, and so like that would be the storybook ending, is to finish in LA. It's not quite Toronto where I grew up, but it is where I feel like I became like an adult, and really became myself and found my identity, which was when I went to college and I was on my own for the first time. I was in a new country, had to figure things out and find my way. And I learned a lot of life lessons in those 4.5 years when I was at USC. So having it in North America, pretty close, it just sounds like written out of a storybook. So I would love for it to be the last time I touch a track, at least as a professional, like active athlete, run those races in LA. And then as soon as those done, like literally just like never put on spikes again. Unless it's
Well,
for
that's
like
amazing.
teaching my kids how to run or something.
Yeah. And to your point, your kids will be at an age where they'll remember, which is such an amazing gift, right? Like
Hmm.
they'll be
Hmm.
able to witness it and remember it, which then becomes kind of this culminating moment for all the things you guys have done as a family to
Hmm.
get to this point. Time has flown by because it's very easy to chat with you, and this has been a lot of fun. But I can't let you go without asking you a few rapid fire questions if you're up for it.
I'm ready.
Okay. Who's the most famous person that you've met or that you admire, or both?
First, most famous person I've met, probably LeBron.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's pretty
Um,
famous.
yeah. I'll also say Usain Bolt.
Mm,
Yeah, and uh, admire. Yeah, I'll just go LeBron again. I've always looked up to
yeah.
him as an athlete from when I was young, just following his career and how he battled adversity and stuff like that. That's always been something that I've resonated with.
He really has had an admirable career from staying scandal free, drama
Right.
free, and
Family
just
Guy.
showing up. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's knock on wood. It's kind
Yeah.
of
No.
it's kind of amazing, right? It's
Right.
sadly in that space, it's pretty impressive.
Mhm.
If you didn't become an accomplished Olympian, a professional athlete, what else do you think you could be doing today?
Well, I always wanted to be a lawyer when I was younger, so I
Ooh,
would like to think that I'd pursue law school if I didn't go pro after college and be a lawyer.
nice. Is that something that could be on your bucket list? You alluded to things you wanted to do after the LA
Mhm.
Olympics. Is becoming a lawyer one of them?
No, no, that was a dream from my youth. I've
Oh.
since kind of seen lawyers and people that pursued that space, and I'm like, yeah, that's not really what I want to be doing. I was a business minor, and so like entrepreneurship is really the route I want to go.
Yes. Amazing. And if you could go back and share some words of wisdom with your younger self, what stands out to you? Or what are you telling young track stars or kids today? What's the message you like to share?
I think winning is all about how you lose, right? And it sounds like an oxymoron, but when you really break it down,
Hmm.
everyone's going to lose. It's an inevitability, like death, taxes, and losing at some point in your life. That's just something that you're going to face. Nobody wins and goes 100% unless they literally just run race and retire. That it just doesn't happen. If you want to pursue true greatness and have a lasting career, you're going to lose at some point. It's just a matter of how you get back on your feet and how resilient you can be and how you respond to it. Like if you respond to it with despondence and you're devastated and you just want to give up and you don't want to learn from it, or you blame everybody else and don't take accountability, you'll never get better. But those who can lose in the biggest moments and get back up and rise up again by recommitting themselves, learning from their mistakes, and surrounding themselves with people who can get them better, those are the ones that go on to achieve the icon status and the greatest achievements that we see and grow to admire.
It's so true. The greatest, who we would probably identify as success stories, be it in sport or anything else in life, no one had a journey paved with only successes.
Right.
There's always stories of failure, setbacks, loss, and that's how we grow. I mean, repositioning failure as an opportunity to learn and do better is something we could probably all benefit from. So I couldn't agree more. Well, Aaron, you're amazing. You are such a joy. Like I said, I love following you on social. You put out so much great content. You're also putting out, if anyone out there listening is a budding track star, has kids who are interested, or just really fascinated with the sport like me, because I generally avoid running at all cost. But if you generally have an interest, you put out so much neat content.
Thank you.
And I just love following you and what you're doing. And it's just been such a proud Canadian moment for me to get to speak to you and hear a little bit more behind the scenes of what happened on that amazing day when you guys won gold. And I just want to thank you for, continuing to put the message out there, getting on stages, sharing your story, inspiring the next generation. It matters. So thank you for doing that. It was really great chatting with you today.
Yeah, it was awesome to have you hosted me through this podcast. And like you said, the time flew by. I could talk for days about all this stuff. Stuff really resonates with me and my message. And I appreciate you having me on this podcast. And I love talking to people who are passionate about the same things I am. And, leadership and business mindset and all that stuff is what I'm very passionate about myself. So, yeah, love talking about it and keep doing the work that you're doing. It was a pleasure to speak to you. And, looking forward to this episode coming out.
Yeah, me too. Thanks so much, Aaron. It was really nice chatting with you. We'll see you soon.
Likewise. Take care. Thanks.